right. So homework for today was to add in kind of a shop type thing, right? Um, to hopefully get you some boosts to your fighting and that kind of stuff. And uh, so that should be fairly similar to the fight scene. So when you first come in here, a shop can kind of start off with maybe just one item or something like that. And your guy comes in. Let's see, how do we have it? Is there any movement or anything yet? No, so this is our shopkeeper. This is some item that they sell for you. So maybe this is gets you hit points back or something like that. So it heals you. Um, but things need to have a price associated with them. So maybe it's a number of pellets. So you have to collect pellets in order to afford those things. So let's kind of start off and just fill this in a little bit. Um, so for right now, uh, we probably want to show what our players' current money is, what their current pellet count is. Do we have this hooked up to anything at this point? So there's that guy, there's that guy. So we do not have any scripts that we've written yet, right? Nope. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and let's create a script that runs off of the, actually, let's start off by just running a script that kind of governs the entire shop. All right. Because if you like, we already have a script called player controller, and the idea is that guy is he's the thing that allows us to move our player around. So since we're not really moving around in this scene, we might want to be able to govern it another way rather than adding some extra specialized functions into player controller. So let's go ahead and create an empty game object here. We'll call this guy shop controller. Actually, let's call it, well, that's fine. Shop controller is good enough. We'll add a script to that for the shop controller script. So we'll go into our scripts. This guy will be a mono behavior. We might want to start separating these things up. So maybe I'm going to create another folder inside of this guy, maybe called shop scripts. Obviously, as your project keeps getting larger and larger, it might be beneficial to start putting scripts in places where it's more easy to find, or more easily found. All right, so we'll go ahead and create a C# script in here called shop controller, right? And we'll go ahead and attach shop controller to our game object here. So I'll just drag that over there. So now let's go and work on this a little bit. So we definitely want to have access to, actually, we can make the argument, do we even need to have access to the player or access to the item? We definitely are going to need to have access to these text mesh pros so we can fill it in with stuff, right? So let's at least start off with that. So I double clicked on our script. We'll say using what a TMP, what's the TM Pro? There it is. Thank you. It's testing you. Or is my memory going? You decide. All right, so we'll have a couple of public variables in here. So again, this is our MVC in action. So we'll say public text mesh pro. Let's call this guy player TMP. And then we'll also have, right now we just have one item. So we'll say item TMP. We can decide how we want to handle having multiple items in there if that ends up making sense at some point for us. So we'll have those two things. I'll go ahead and save this and go connect those up so I don't forget. So there's our shop controller. It's expecting me to give it our players TMP, which is our pellets, and our items TMP, which will be its cost. All right, so for right now, why don't we just say, just to fill it in, inside of start, we'll say this dot player TMP is going to be equal to, we want to get our current pellet count, and our current pellet count is currently living inside of my singleton, I believe, right? Current pellets. Now that guy is an int, and we're putting it into something that is going to hold a string. So dot text is equal to empty string concatenated with that dude. So that's how we can turn an int into a string. This kind of goes back to when we first introduced Java. I mentioned that Java is a string-based language. You can get something into a string format, or you can work with strings very easily. C# is the same thing. Other languages like Swift actually make it significantly more difficult to work with strings. You would have to use some functions to build them up. C++, you have your couple different ways. You do have more modern strings in C++ that work this way. But you have to go all the way back to the various lineages of strings in C++, where you had the original just character arrays, where you have external functions like string copy, strcpy. I think we saw that at some point when we were messing in C++ last semester. Then you had something called C strings, which added some features, but more modernly, we have a string namespace that lets you do modern stuff with strings in C++ as well. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say this dot, what do I call it? Item TMP dot text, and let's just say that this guy costs 1 for no good reason right now. Realistically, you would maybe have, I mean, we can actually start thinking through this a little bit. So we can actually go into our scripts folder. I'm going to go into our normal classes, and I'll go ahead and create a folder in here called shop scripts. We might move it out of here later on, but it might make sense for us to have a singleton associated with our items or our shops in general. You could also maybe connect this to a database behind the scenes where you have in there the different items that may exist and their values. We'll just do it as a singleton. So I'll create a C# script. We're going to call this guy item singleton, items singleton. Good enough. All right. Now this guy again is not a mono behavior. He's just going to be a plain Jane Java class. All right. And at this point, we only have a single item. So we want this guy to be accessible in here. So we might say public static int cherry item cost. Maybe set that equal to 1, something like that. And then we go back into our shop controller, and rather than just say hard code 1 there, we would instead say item singleton dot cherry item cost, which was an int, and we'll concatenate that onto a string to give ourselves the value there. All right, so now whenever we want to add in new items, we can just put it into that singleton with the associated cost. If we decide to change the cost at any point in time, we only have to change it in one place, and as long as the rest of the program is using stuff from that one place, we should be good to go. All right, so let's make sure this is showing up correctly initially. Player currently has 0 pellets, and the item cost for this thing is 1. All right, so now we have to determine how we are going to select these items. So you could click on it with the mouse. You could press a number, kind of whatever makes sense for you. I think there is an input dot mouse down something or other. Input dot get mouse button up. Does it let me choose a specific mouse button? Get mouse button up. It gives me a Boolean, returns whether or not the given mouse button is held down. It just takes an int button, so I'm guessing it's a 0 or a 1. Okay. So this guy's expecting me to pass it some integer. There's probably is there a mouse? Well, let me just guess at 0 right now. There's probably a class with a bunch of static functions in it, or static fields in it that allows us to say we want the left button or the right button. So left is 0, right is 1. Do we seriously not have a class that will, because usually it would be something like mouse dot left button that behind the scenes would be equal to 0, but we don't have to remember that it's 0, something like that. So let's say Unity get mouse button Unity. Okay, so it's under pointer. Here's the properties for it. Type is mouse. Yeah, here's our left button. And this guy lives in input control, input device, pointer, mouse, what seems to exist already. And that's in Unity Engine's input system. So using Unity Engine dot engine dot input system. Oh, I already have that in there. That's the guy we already used. Dot. How do I get at the class? So mouse is a pointer, inherits from pointer. The namespace is input system. So that is what it would be. Oh, well, not going to worry about it. There's a class called mouse that we can say mouse dot left button and it'll give us the 0 is what it looks like. So let's just, we'll put a 0 in there right now. We'll say if the mouse button is pressed, then let's just put something out in the console right now. Because at this point, we're just reading in whether the button was pressed, not necessarily where it was pressed. Go ahead and run this guy again. Load our console up. Go ahead and click the left mouse button. So we're responding to that. Well, now we want to get the position of that guy because we want to know, did we click on a specific item? There's actually probably something with colliders that we can mess with. Unity mouse collider. So we have something called on mouse over, on mouse click. We can actually explore that a little bit, similar to like on trigger enter. So if we start typing in on mouse down, mouse exit, on mouse up. Okay, so that that happens over this guy will get called regardless. Let me show you this. Say mouse button pressed here. We'll get rid of that down here. I think we're going to see the behavior will be the same. This function gets called automatically whenever we release a mouse button, is how I am betting this guy is going to work. So we should see the same. It's not interesting. Well, then for now, rather than mess around with mouse clicks too much more, unless we have to have a collider on it. Oh, there was something. It's called when the game object is clicked on. Okay, so we would actually have to put this on. This will actually help us. So I'm going to go ahead and get a item script. This will actually be interesting. So we'll go to our project. I'm in my shop scripts, but I want to go ahead and go back to my mono behaviors shop script, and we're going to create a C# script called item controller. And we'll go ahead and implement the on mouse up function. We'll print item clicked. And then we're going to attach this guy to the cherry. So this item controller should listen to a mouse up click on the thing that this is hanging off of. So we'll select our item here. And then we'll go ahead and drag our controller over here. And that controller doesn't do anything in start or update, but it does have a listener that's listening for mouse up, releasing the mouse while you're interacting with that cherry. So I believe this should give me the ability to click, and it doesn't. Let's see if on mouse down made a difference. That would be on the press down. Mouse up would be when you let go. Nope, that's not how you do it either. Controller is running. Oh, they want us to do something with raycasts. That'll go off where you clicked and into the scene. Let's just do a number press. Make life easier. All right. So a little bit about how the mouse works. So we'll go back here. So now we're going to listen for a button press. So let's just say you select the item 1, 2, or 3 for right now. So we'll say if input dot get key up, key code dot, maybe 1. It's alpha 1. All right, thank you. So if we pressed the 1 key, let's print out real quick. 1 key pressed. Make sure this guy is doing what we want him to do. And it is. All right, so when we go ahead and select that guy, pressing the 1 key, we probably would want to have something over it to show us the current version of these guys. Let's say, call this guy, to rename you. Item 1. Just hover that over this. And we'll put in the text, this is 1. And its cost would fill in. All right, so now what we're going to do is if we press 1, we're going to go ahead and collect one of these cherries. We should see our hit points increase. We don't know what our hit points are right now, but this will make us our hit points increase, but also make our pellets go down. All right, because we're going to spend something on this guy. Let's go back into code. So if we press the 1 key, we want to charge the player for the item. Since right now we know the only item is the cherry, and this is why I was trying to do it on a script, and we probably will do it on a script. I just don't want to waste more class time to do it with the cherry, but right now we have 1 item. We know we're selecting that 1 item by pressing 1. We would have to go and look up, okay, well, what item is in that slot 1. It has a value of 1. We happen to know what it is. So we're going to say my singleton dot the player. Now we want to manipulate this player's pellets. So if we go into our player class, probably going to be easier for me to get to it from normal class, player. So a player has a number of hit points that came from inhabitant. All right, so realistically, both players and monsters could potentially get hit points back. You know, if you think about a fight, maybe a monster is a magic user and can heal themselves or something like that during a fight. So we would probably go to the inhabitant level here and say inhabitants can have hit points added to them or subtracted from them. All right, so we want, right now we have the ability to get some hit points. We'll get the hit points, gives us the value of it. This is our getter for it. So now we want to give ourselves a add HP, which is going to take in a number of HP to add. If we want to police this in some way where we don't let them add too much at a certain time, or the value has to be greater than 0, so you can't add something like -5 hit points, you know, maybe we say something like num HP. If num HP is greater than 0, so if you're trying to add a positive number of hit points, then we'll say this dot HP plus equals num HP. which is the same thing as saying this dot HP is equal to this dot HP plus num HP. So you can decide which of those syntaxes you like better. This is called a compound operator using the plus equals sign. All right. So this would kind of be the reason I forced this issue a little bit is this would be a reason to have a getter and a setter around a private field rather than just make the hit point field public. Because we've made it public, then we could just say the player.hp is equal to whatever and directly access it. Where by making it private and then giving us public getters and setters, that allows us to get as read-only the value of hit points. But it also allows us to modify hit points, but it lets us programmatically interfere in that possibility by making sure you're not trying to add a negative number of hit points or something like that. So this would be something you could not pull off if you had made the hit points here public. Then it would be a free-for-all. They can change the variable however they want. So we're only going to let them add a positive number of hit points. All right. We also need our player. Let's see. Our player has... Who's keeping track of the pellets? Oh, just our singleton. Player doesn't keep track of the pellets. Okay. So we have a reservoir of pellets at the singleton level rather than housed inside the player. Not sure that's the best idea, but that's the way ours works right now. So what we want to do is we want to charge the player for that number of pellets. And if they could afford it, then we want to dock the player or add the hit points to the player in this case. All right, so if we press alpha key 1, we're going to say if my singleton dot current pellets is greater than or equal to we need the cost of the current item. We happen to know that the only thing we're dealing with here is the cherry. We'll make this a little bit better in our next assignment, let's say. But we're going to say then, what do we call this? An item singleton dot cherry item cost. So if the player currently has enough money, they have enough pellets to afford the cherry, then we're going to say my singleton dot current pellets minus equals item singleton dot cherry item cost. So we'll reduce their pellets by that number. And then we'll go ahead and increase their hit points by some value. We probably want to create an item class that brings all this stuff into it. So that we can say, okay, well, here we have an item called cherry that increases your hit points by, let's say, 5, something like that. So we could say, since this was a cherry in this case, we just hard-coded it. We've already charged ourselves. Now we'll say my singleton dot the player dot add HP, and we'll add 5. We'll add 5 there. Just hard-coded. Now we do have an issue here, though, is as we have it written right now, our player could go over their maximum number of hit points. So we could basically, as long as we had enough pellets, we can make ourselves super, super, super powerful. You probably don't want to let them heal past full. So if they started off with 15 hit points and they're currently at 13 and we add 5, we want them to go to 15 as a max. So we would go back into the inhabitant class where we have our add HP. So as long as the number they're trying to add is greater than 0, we'll go ahead and add it. We can then have a second if statement if we want. If this dot HP is greater than Did we keep track? Yeah, the max HP. This dot max HP, then this dot HP is equal to this dot max HP. So don't let our player have more than max hit points. Protect against overhealing. Make some sense? And I'll actually put that inside that if statement. Probably wouldn't have made a difference, but we only need to ask that question in the event that they passed us a positive number of hit points that we're adding. So this makes it a little bit more efficient since we're not always asking if their hit points is greater than max HP, only if we're going to modify their hit points at all. And you certainly could have done it as part of the modifying their hit points. You could have said, well, don't let them even go over maximum hit points. So before we add it, we might manipulate it. In this case, I'm saying I'm just going to add it. Then I'll check if their hit points is too high and I'll adjust it accordingly. Okay. So that is back in our shop controller. So in our shop controller, if we press the 1 key and we have enough money, we'll go ahead and buy the cherry and increase our hit points. All right. Now, right now on our scene, we're showing the number of pellets. We're showing the number of the cost of the cherry. I think I mentioned for the homework assignment, maybe hard code and give yourself some starter pellets for testing. So we'll just go in and cheat a little bit. We'll go into my singleton, and rather than start them off with 0 pellets, we'll start them off with 10 pellets. All right, so now they're a little richer than they were before, since we're not testing by getting us into this scene. So that's something you need to consider when you're doing game programming. You're probably just working on an individual scene. And when you want to test your code, you don't necessarily want to have to go through and play 5 minutes of gameplay to get into the part of it you want to test. So we're just going to start off in this scene, but since we're testing being able to buy stuff, we're going to artificially give them more money. So we're going to say set this back to 0 for normal gameplay. Something along those lines. All right, so now if we run this, the player should look like they have 10 hit points. Sorry, 10 pellets. So then we want to buy one of these guys, and we want to see our pellets go down by 1. So I just pressed 1. I think I pressed 1. I'll press it again just in case. So our pellets really should be at an 8 right now if I did indeed press it twice, but we didn't see it change. Why did we not see it change? We go back into our shop controller. Notice that we are only setting the player's pellets inside of start, where potentially we just modified the number of pellets for the player. So I'm going to go ahead and just to keep this relatively simple in case we want to say more inside of that Text Mesh Pro for the player, I'm going to go ahead and say we're going to create a private function, void. We'll call this guy update player TMP. And this guy will do what we used to do inside of start. So now in start, we'll go ahead and call this dot update player TMP. So we'll update it initially to show what their current pellets are. And then anytime there would be a change to the number of pellets, number of pellets, we will go ahead and also update the player TMP. So player TMP only gets updated by a single function, and we call that function from multiple places rather than duplicate the code in multiple places. duplicating code is typically considered bad programming practice. Especially in a situation like this where we're kind of hobbling into our shop here, hard coding a lot of stuff, things like that. You can lose track of your code pretty quickly when you have some randomly hard coded things somewhere. All right. So now it should show us that we are costing ourselves a number of pellets when we buy something. So I just bought it. Okay, my players should definitely be at max hit points by now. Now, what we could do is we could add to that update thing the player's current hit points as well, since that's the thing that's getting modified right now, so we can see how that is updating. So now we would go in and say, well, I'm going to go ahead and update our player's TMP and not just put in the current number of pellets. Maybe I'll also add parenthesis HP colon, is it my singleton dot the player dot get HP? So we'll make that little text mesh pro show our current pellets and also show our current HP. If we wanted to put a little, we could say pellets like that, then HP after that. So when we update it, it'll show us what's our current balance for pellets and what's our HP, since that's the thing that we are modifying. Oh, I need to make that text mesh pro way bigger. It's this guy here. Stretch that out. All right, so there's our pellets, 10, HP 10. Now I can go ahead and spend a pellet, but now our HP is still 10 because that's our max HP. But if I had come in here possibly hurt, then we would have gained some hit points up to a maximum of 5. All right, so we'll call that kind of our current, I don't know, ghetto shop or something, something like that. Now, what we'll need to decide is how do we get into the shop? Under what circumstances do we get into the shop? Is this something that we want the player to be able to get into at any point in time, maybe pressing the escape key? Do we want them, because we're already, when we pick up a pellet, we have a fight. Maybe after we have a fight, if we need to heal up, we can press escape or something, and that takes us into the shop and allows us to do that. So let's just add that little feature. Should be a fairly short homework assignment. And then we're going to clean this up next time to be a, I don't know, a better implementation of this. So update our game such that the player can go to the shop whenever they are not in battle and press the escape key. Or another key of your choice if you want to have a different key to get in there. All right, so you can't do this during a fight, but when you're out of a fight, no harm, press escape, you can go into the shop and you can shop. Make some sense? All right, so should be a fairly short assignment. We'll add to this on Friday, and so I'll see everybody then. And I'll update the code and put the assignment up. So
What if we already did that?
just submit your link again. It's fine.
Does it have